Ladies, gentlemen, and druids of all ages, it's time to talk about this class, and oh boy, it's going to be a good season for all of you, my shape-shifting friends. For those wondering about a leveling build, Pulverize is absolutely the way this season, and I used a variation of a Pulverize build with Cataclysm worked in all the way up until the start of Torment 3, which is when I started to make the swaps into the thing most people are excited to put together this season with the changes that were going into it into Season 7 itself, which is a proper Cataclysm-focused build. Cataclysm is the Druid ultimate skill that rains down lightning bolts and throws around tornadoes, and it looks cool as all hell, but for the first few seasons, it was just mostly pointless, honestly. But with Season 7, they are making a concerted effort towards making more viable, strong, ultimate skill-focused builds. And along with some other changes that have come, it has made Cataclysm essentially overtake the old slot that Hurricane used to take for Druid builds. You do a fair bit of setup and managing buffs, then you press Cataclysm, and it snapshots every damage buff that you had that was active when it started, making it keep those for the full duration. For those that aren't familiar with the term snapshotting, it means that if we have a buff active when we first press Cataclysm, it will lock the entire duration of that skill as a guaranteed critical hit or a guaranteed overpower for the full duration. You can lock damage boosts that are otherwise quite short term, and by this, you can make Cataclysm itself your main source of damage for its full duration. And while the big, ridiculously high-powered version of Cataclysm Druid won't come online until you at least have legendary runes to fuel one of the heftier damage increases, for this current stage of the game, once you picked up a few specific uniques, you can swap out of Pulverize, or whatever your leveling build was, and swap to this as a sort of entry Cataclysm starter, is the way that I'm looking at it. The build that will help you make that larger leap from Torment 3 into Torment 4, and will then just slowly evolve and change into the proper endgame Cataclysm setup that was busting up pit clears on the PTR, even without the bugs that Druid did have there. All that said, let's break down the full skill tree that I'm using currently for this earlier game Cataclysm variation, and why I take the skill points that I do. Then we'll look at our Spirit Boons, followed by Witchcraft Powers, then by our gear, the uniques needed to make it functional, the uniques that just sort of make it better, and then of course, the Legendaries, the affixes, tempering, and things like that, as well as Runewords and Gems too, followed by our Paragon board setup where it sits so far, and then just any tips that I've got from playing the build myself too. Starting with the skill tree itself then, we pick up Maul as a basic skill here, as well as Enhanced Maul 2 to give us Fortify. This gives us an easy way to stay in werebear form constantly, which we use to trigger various bonuses, snapshotting into Cataclysm itself. Then we'll be grabbing Pulverize as well as its enhancement, and then also Primal Pulverize. This is mostly used because of Primal Pulverize and the damage reduction it can give us against any beefier enemies like bosses or bigger elites, and this will help you stay in bear form more often as well, as it is another bear skill. We then also grab 3 ranks of Predatory Instinct as a passive here for the bonus crit chance that gives us against close enemies, and then we also are going to be picking up Earthen Bulwark for a barrier that we can activate on demand, and with the enhancement this also makes us unstoppable, which is great. And then we also pick up Preserving Bulwark for Fortify gained on cast. The main importance of the skill though is simply to proc Resonance because it's an earth skill, and that is a passive that we'll be talking about later. We'll then be grabbing Debilitating Roar to reduce the damage of nearby enemies. We take the enhancement for Fortify Generation as well, and then we grab Innate Debilitating Roar for a damage increase to the player while the Roar effect is active too. In this cluster we'll also be grabbing a bunch of passives, specifically full ranks of Backlash over here for bonus damage after casting a defensive skill, which is very easily snapshottable into Cataclysm, full ranks of Ancestral Fortitude here for bonus elemental resistances to all of them, which is especially helpful at this earlier stage where we're trying to find resistances wherever we can, especially in a build that uses multiple uniques, and then 3 ranks of Vigilance for damage reduction after using a defensive skill. Then over in the Companion cluster specifically, we'll only be picking up passives, specifically 3 ranks of Nature's Reach over here to deal bonus damage to distant enemies, increased if they are slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back, and then 3 ranks of Feral Aptitude as well for bonus damage when we are healthy and when we are above 100% movement speed as well. After that we have our Wrath cluster here, and in here we'll be grabbing Hurricane as an actual active skill for a radius of damage around us, its enhancement which slows any enemies in the radius 2, and then Savage Hurricane 2 which lowers the damage of any enemy that is within the radius as well. The main use of Hurricane as a skill, however, is once again to activate another buff that we have that we can throw into Cataclysm, which is related to a legendary aspect we'll talk about later. Then we just take a pile of passives in the cluster, 3 ranks of Charged Atmosphere over here for just a summoned lightning bolt every few seconds. More importantly, this also boosts the damage of lightning bolts in general. And then 3 ranks of Electric Shock, which both gives immobilization chance on lightning damage and increased lightning damage against immobilized enemies as well. Then I've got 2 ranks into Endless Tempest as well, just for extra duration on both Hurricane and Cataclysm. This is a bit of a variable depending on your gear, the amount of points that you want in this passive. You can go full 3 ranks for more comfortable Cataclysm looping if your gear needs it, but you essentially want to judge whether or not your Cataclysm Cataclysm is able to be run back to back, and if it is, you want to take points out of this. The less points you have, the better, because you can put them in other places. However, if you need this as a sort of crutch to let you use Cataclysm a bit earlier, then you absolutely can, but know that it will eventually be replaced. We then grab 1 rank of the Mending passive here for some increased healing in Werebear form, and 3 ranks of Provocation for a guaranteed overpower every 12 seconds that we are in bear form. This is our main way of getting guaranteed overpowers on our Cataclysm at this stage of the game, and it essentially just needs you to watch a buff timer tick over on your UI to know when to use it. Then we have 1 rank of the Neurotoxin passive as well to make any poisoned enemies also be slowed, and that will be all enemies because we're poisoning everything, and then 3 ranks of Envenom for a hefty multiplicative bonus to our critical damage against poisoned enemies too. Then we get to our ultimate skill cluster, and in here we'll of course be picking up the full 5 ranks of Cataclysm itself, with the bonus ranks that I have coming from specific uniques or combinations. We take its enhancement for increased duration on Cataclysm as well, and then also Supreme Cataclysm, which makes enemies vulnerable when hit by the lightning bolts too. The rank 5 effect on Cataclysm itself is that it will slow nearby enemies when you activate it for the tiny bonus that is. Then we'll be picking up some passives here too, 3 ranks of Defiance for bonus nature magic damage to elites, as well as 3 ranks of Resonance for bonus nature magic damage in general, but this 6% bonus damage multiplier is actually tripled if it's for a Storm skill used after an Earth skill, or vice versa. So the final thing that we do before pressing Cataclysm every time is use Earthen Bulwark, because it's an Earth skill, and that will give us the bonus tripling effect when we use Cataclysm from this passive. We then also pick up 3 ranks of Catastrophe as a passive too, which just gives us bonus damage after we cast our ultimate skill, as well as 3 ranks of Quick Shift over here for bonus damage after shapeshifting to a new animal form, which importantly happens a fair bit within the sort of cast combo chain that we do before starting Cataclysm, which does make it boost the ultimate's damage. We then also grab 3 ranks of Heightened Senses, which just gives us both actual damage reduction and also movement speed too, which is quite nice. Then finally we have our key passive, which is going to be Ursine's Strength, mostly for the meaty bonus to overpower damage that it gives us, and given that we aim to overpower with most if not all Cataclysms as our main damage, this is just way too hefty of a bonus to actually ignore. And with that, we are done with skill points, so let's talk about our Spirit Boon choices within this build. In the Stag path, you either want the Gift of the Stag for more damage, as this increases the bonus that you can get from the Ancestral Guidance Paragon node towards our ultimate by giving us extra maximum spirits. However, if you are feeling a little bit squishy, Wariness is also incredible for damage reduction from elites. Then we bond with the Eagle Spirit, so we can take 2 boons here. We take Scythe Talons for increased critical strike chance and increased lucky hit chance. We don't have guaranteed crits in the starter version of the build that we're using here, so we have to build at least a bit of crit chance in to get those lovely orange numbers flowing from Cataclysm itself. Then we take Avian Wrath as well from this path for the 40% increased crit damage multipliers. That's just really meaty. Then we'll be taking Calamity within the Wolf path for bonus ultimate duration, and then Calm Before the Storm for lucky hit chance with nature magic skills to lower ultimate cooldown. And this is just to help manage your Cataclysm cooldown for this early starter stage of the build. Later on we'll be dropping this instead to use Masochistic for the healing once you don't need it to help manage your Cataclysm. With that covered, then let's talk about our Witchcraft Powers as well for this stage of the build. Currently what I'm running with is Doom Orb as the main unique power for heavy damage orbiting around us at all times, paired with Soul Harvest to generate bonus willpower for us, which is an excellent scaler for our damage, Hex of Flames for lucky hit chance to apply this hex to enemies, dealing bonus damage when hit again, but instead exploding in an AoE if it's a critical hit. Then Aura of Siphoning, because we essentially need an aura active to pair with one of our Occult Gems, and this one gives us a fairly large amount of healing at higher levels. Then Decay Augmentation, which makes all witchcraft damage do an additional chunk of its damage as bonus damage over time, specifically Poison for us as Druid, which lets us keep our enemies consistently poisoned. Then Purging Touch, which boosts the damage of Eldritch Witchcraft, which does include Doom Orb, as well as Hex of Flames, and then eventually will actually also include our ultimate as well. How? Well, let's talk about our Occult Gems too. Currently I have exactly 0 of these, I just haven't had the materials drop to make them. The earliest one that you can get that is very good for our setup is Toadling's Wish, and this simply increases the potency of Growth and Decay witch powers. For us, that includes not only Soul Harvest, willpower generation, but also Aura of Siphoning and Decay Augmentation as well. Then long term, we also want 2 legendary Occult Gems, which are very important, especially Voice of the Stars. This is the absolute highest priority as soon as you can get it, because it gives Cataclysm all of the witchcraft tags and increases the damage, but this also means it'll get the damage increase from Purging Touch and the secondary poisoning on Decay Augmentation as well, so this is a very large damage increase from Cataclysm itself. Then our final Occult Gem is going to be Friend of the Bog. What this does is increases our willpower, which is again one of our main damage scalers in general, as well as giving us maximum life and making us permanently unhindered, which lets us walk through enemies freely, which is just sort of a lovely bonus, really. With that covered, let's move on to our gear itself, starting with the uniques that we have. and this is the tough part of this conversation to have now, which is that even the starter version of the Cataclysm build this season does have some required uniques before you can viably swap to it without just feeling weak as hell. The most important ones being Arida's Inexorable Will with a decent ultimate cooldown reduction roll on the affix itself. The rest of the actual item is pure bonus. The ultimate cooldown is what you're after, and this gives you a bunch of it, though the percent willpower gain is also quite strong for us too, because we scale a lot with willpower. Then you also need the mjolnic ryng, which not only increases Cataclysm's damage and gives unlimited spirit while active, but also gives Cataclysm all of your lightning bolt bonuses, so anything you have that boosts the damage of lightning bolts will also boost Cataclysm damage, which just stacks it up so high that makes it very scalable, which is why Cataclysm can be the focus of a build now. But the main reason it's a full-on requirement is the bonus ranks of Endless Tempest that are on the unique too, as it helps you reach longer Cataclysm duration than cooldown, which is what you need to help you loot the skill. Then you also need Tempest Roar as a helmet too. I know it's a tough one, but it enables a bunch of the synergies that we're running here, a lot of the things that we're using, and otherwise without this you lose all shapeshifting based bonuses, which is a lot of our damage scaling at this point for the build. So literally any Tempest Roar will do to start with, but then I'd also recommend using the Flicker Step boots too. These aren't a requirement, but a good roll on the actual unique effect on these will help massively in making Cataclysm loopable earlier than it otherwise would be. The other unique that I've got on right now is Mad Wolf's Glee, and what this does is just give us a bunch of bonus wolf skill ranks, which synergizes with Tempest Roar, which makes Cataclysm a wolf skill, and with this it'll boost it a bunch from the actual skill ranks. As for our legendaries then, for your weapon and the slot that you get a double bonus on your actual legendary aspect, we have the new Apogeic Furor aspect. This increases ultimate skill damage every time that you use your ultimate until you reach maximum stacks, at which point it resets the stacks and all of your cooldowns as well. For your tempering, you want Chance for Cataclysm to deal double damage, and then also increased lightning bolt damage, which directly translates to Cataclysm damage 2 from the mjolnic ryng. The ideal 3 affixes on your weapon are Willpower, Maximum Life, and then Overpower, and the masterworking priority is Chance for Cataclysm double damage above all else, then Maximum Life and Willpower pretty equal in second place. For your amulet and the 50% power boost for your legendary aspect there, we have Changeling's Depth, which gives us bonus damage while hitting a poisoned enemy as a werebear, and we purposefully trigger Cataclysm from bear form so that we can enable its interaction consistently for the full duration of Cataclysm. Tempering on this item should be Cataclysm cooldown, which is a high priority, as again we want your ultimate to be up as often as you need it, and then lightning bolt damage secondarily as an offensive temper. Mine rolled poorly with just regular storm damage, but lightning bolt is what you want here. As for the affixes, for this specific stage of the build, not quite the final in-game version, you simply aren't likely to find passives on your amulet yet, so percent willpower is massive, then crit chance and total armor percent increase to help shore up your defenses for this stage as well is my general recommendation right now, with upgrade priority being Cataclysm cooldown reduction as you need it, otherwise the percent willpower increase that I personally don't have yet on my amulet for now. For your gloves then, we've got the Runeworker's Conduit aspect, which causes crits with storm skills to summon lightning bolts, but much more importantly for our purposes is the part where it increases lightning bolt damage dependent on your willpower, because this combined with the mjolnic ryng, which makes Cataclysm include lightning bolt increases, makes it scale significantly and ridiculously based on our actual willpower itself, which is a large part of why we love attributes so much on this actual build. On your gloves as well, you'd ideally have willpower as a stat, maximum life, and then either all element resistance or flat armor gain, depending on what you need to fill most in your defensive gaps. Then finally we have the pants as well, which are running the Storm Shifters aspect, which gives us +5 skill ranks to shapeshifting skills while Hurricane is active, specifically having a large effect on Cataclysm itself if you use it after Hurricane. For tempering here, you want increased Hurricane duration and total armor percent gained to try and fix up your defenses some more as well. Then for the actual affixes on your pants, you want maximum life, all element resistance, and then flat armor as well. As for your gems and your rune words, long term there's some really strong legendary rune combos for this setup, especially with Igni, the new offering generator, and Zan, the rune that gives guaranteed crits and overpowers put together. But at this earlier stage of the game, I instead recommend running Sem, which gives you offering when you evade, with Cracks, which when triggered makes your next non-basic skill consume all of your resource to boost your damage up to 100%. If you line this up with Cataclysm's cast, it literally just doubles the damage for the full duration, though the vast majority of content doesn't doesn't need that level of snapshot preparation involved by any means. For the other runeword, I'm running with the rune that gives me Dark Shroud Shadows from Rogue, just for an extra occasional tiny defensive layer, and we're triggering that with the rune that gives me Offering when I spend resources, a little bit of a combo and synergy with the other runeword we've got too. Aside from these, you want to use Occult Gems in your jewelry the way that we talked about earlier if you have them. Otherwise, fill out your jewelry with armor or elemental resists as needed, and your armor itself with sapphires in the gem slots for bonus willpower and the damage that translates into, especially for this build. Then for our mercenaries, for your main mercenary, we're going to be running with Subo because of some of the bonuses that he can give us. We go down the path through Wire Trap into Ready at Hand, which gives us bonus movement speed after engaging an elite, as well as Cover Fire, which leads directly into Opening Fire for an increased critical strike damage multiplier to enemies that are hit by Cover Fire for 4 seconds afterwards, which isn't bad at all. Then for our reinforcement, we've got Rahir, who will be running Bastion on to trigger whenever we are injured, just to save us whenever we're hurt. It's just a nice sort of little safety net as well. With all that gone over, then let's dive into what my Paragon board setup looks like at this current point with my current setup. And with the note as we begin here that I have my current glyphs and the nodes surrounding them set up to be functional with glyphs that are under level 15, so you don't need the range radius increase. But obviously if you have level 15 glyphs and you've gotten that radius increase, you can move a few of these points later on. Starting on the actual starting board itself, then we go up the right side through the damage increase itself over into the glyph socket here, in which we'll be putting in the electrocution glyph. What this does is give you bonus damage with lightning bolts, which we translate directly into bonus cataclysm damage, so it's fantastic. And the additional bonus is any enemy hit by a lightning bolt, which we do also summon, will just take 20% increased damage from us for 5 seconds afterwards. So this is very, very useful for us. Then we wrap back down to the left to grab these maximum life nodes here, just because that's a lot of defensive value for just a few points of actual travel. We then go up to the left to grab the extra damage nodes, and then travel up the right side through the damage of elites to get to our next board. The first board that we're actually attaching them is going to be the Ancestral Guidance board with the Legendary Power in the bottom left, because that just makes it really easy to actually get to. We then go up and over to the Legendary Power itself, passing through Reclamation and the nodes around it for bonus maximum spirit and some spirit on kill, and that's mostly because it actually pairs with Ancestral Guidance, which gives us 40% increased damage 5 seconds after we spend some spirit, which does come into account on some occasions, but mostly the ultimate skills deal 1% increased damage per spirit when cast, which is incredible, and it does make our damage actually scale with maximum spirit, even with an ultimate skill. We then wrap up into Resolve for some bonus resistance to all elements, as well as some bonus maximum life too, and then we wrap over and up towards the glyph socket itself, first stopping at Natural Attunement and the nodes around it for resource generation and maximum life. We go up to the glyph socket, and then we stick in Earth and Sky. What this does is increase the effect of magic nodes within the range, as well as give you 10% increased damage with nature magic to crowd-controlled or vulnerable enemies, which will pretty much just be all enemies all the time, so it is just a pile of bonus damage and bonus effect to the nodes that it boosts too. Within this radius then, we grab the willpower needed to actually activate the secondary effect itself. We grab the rare nodes too, because that does give us willpower too, as well as the magic nodes that we want to boost for a bunch of extra damage from these, and then we go out the right side of the board like so, where we'll be attaching on the Lust for Carnage board. First we head up into the Ferocity, Rare, and Magic nodes surrounding it to give us bonus maximum life and some more resistance to all elements, as that's a really important thing to focus on early especially. Then we go down to the Legendary Power itself, which gives us 50% increased damage with werewolf skills, which Cataclysm counts as thanks to the helmet that we're using, and it also gives us spirit when we get critical hits with werewolf skills too, which isn't a negative because of the bonus from Ancestral Guidance itself as well. We then round up over here into the Recuperate, Rare node and the nodes around it for some bonus maximum life, and then down into the glyph socket itself over here we'll be putting the Dominate glyph. This gives us bonus increase just overpower damage as a whole, but also it makes it so when we overpower an enemy, all damage they take from us is increased by 15% for 5 seconds afterwards. Given one of our main goals is making Cataclysm just overpower with every hit, this will pretty much always be active. We then grab both the rare nodes within the radius, as well as getting the actual intelligence to activate the glyph itself. We grab some of the extra magic nodes around the bottom side to make this even easier, and then we head over to the Wild's Call rare node for the extra maximum spirit specifically, and the 2 maximum spirit magic nodes beside it. We then head out the bottom side of the board and attach on the Survival Instincts board, and this is my last few points for now, but as you can see I've gone over into the extra damage reduction while fortified and fortified generation. Then I'll be wrapping around to the legendary node itself, which is just a ton of bonus damage for werebear form. I've already talked about the fact that we go into Cataclysm from werebear form, so this bonus will apply, as you can see. That's all I have for now then. Obviously I will talk to you about upgraded versions of this in the coming days, because we will do more endgame versions of Cataclysm as the days go forward. So that pretty much covers everything about how to actually make the build as to the point that I've got it right now. So let's talk about how to play it. Essentially the entire goal is to manage timers around Cataclysm. You want to get your guaranteed bear form overpowers to sit at 9, 10, or 11 stacks, just less than 12, but still within reach. You want to be at maximum resource, at least as close as possible, and this one pretty much just applies to like before ladder boss fights where you've just got time sitting in an empty room, but you want to be 1 evade short of activating the Runeword to make Cataclysm consume your resource for bonus damage. Then you want to activate Hurricane, which will activate Stormshifter to give you bonus ranks to shapeshifting skills. Use Debilitating Roar to activate the damage boost and get the last final couple of ticks of the Werebear Overpower, standing there after using the Roar to get it up to 12 stacks so that your next damaging skill will guaranteed overpower. Then you evade to trigger the Runeword, use Earthen Bulwark because it's an Earth skill, and then immediately hit Cataclysm, which will then rain down for its entire duration, doing absolutely incredible, insane damage. And the thing is, for the vast majority of situations, even in the starter version of the build, the only things you really need to pay attention to snapshotting on average is to have your Hurricane active, use Earthen Bulwark as the last cast before Cataclysm, and to try your absolute best to line up Cataclysm cast with the Werebear guaranteed overpower from the passives that we've got, as that increases the damage of Cataclysm an absolutely massive amount. Outside of that, with my current numbers on cooldown and such like that, Cataclysm runs anywhere from no cooldown to 8 seconds of cooldown remaining when the duration ends. But because we are wearing Flicker Step as unique boots, if that happens, you just have to find a group of enemies, dodge through them, and it will instantly remove up to 10 seconds of remaining cooldown, making the skill pretty much nearly loopable even this early on. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Your full guide to a sort of mid-tier Torment 3 starter dive into a Cataclysm build. This takes quite a few changes from what will eventually be the proper endgame version to make it function much earlier on if you want to try out the playstyle at an earlier level. It's honestly a ton of fun, as long as you don't mind managing buff timers for the snapshot. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and I hope you enjoy the build if you try it out for yourself as well. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.